Our launch is soundtracked by my dog Isabel scratching her.
Nice. Oh,
Greetings, friends. Welcome to StarryTelling Hour here at the School of Earth Astrology. I am so excited not to hear myself in echo, but to have Urania Universe here with me today. And the topic at hand, astrology and our children. I just cast a chart for the moment now for where I sit in Richmond, California. Urania, you're in Syracuse, yeah?
yeah.
So a few hours ahead as far as the Earth spins. So it won't be Sagittarius rising for you, but
No, it's Capricorn, which works for me. I have a
Capricorn
lot of Capricorn.
ascendant,
Yeah.
Pisces, Saturn guiding that way. That works very well for you in the house of the goddess. I love it. Over here, Sagittarius rising with a Gemini. Jupiter in the 7th, so a great time for a mystical conversation. But Gemini, Jupiter, Sagittarius rising. I'm reminded that not all who wander or wonder are lost. And a warning I don't have to give the folks who follow my work, but we'll probably do a little bit of a meandering today. I want to start with where I first met Urania. I mean, I guess that was at one of the NCGR or San Francisco community discussions that I used to host. In name, anyway, and then in name again. But then I first saw Urania's work at her wonderful YouTube page. And actually thought, for those of the folks here who haven't seen you do magic before, that a fun way to get in would be to ask you to teach me a little bit about this. Because one of my favorite things
Interesting.
about Urania is her ability to move between worlds, the worlds of tarot, the worlds of astrology, the worlds of dream work and myth. And so, yeah, I've been contemplating these cards, and I think you can tell us why, but I'm wondering if you might even just tell us a story about the 2, 3, 4 of swords.
Yeah. I mean, I love it's so funny saying this now, but I love the Three of Swords. Like, I love that you use this very traditional imagery of these cards because I have such a deep relationship with the Three of Swords, and I'm really happy that it hits different now, because I would get this card. There was a period where I was getting it often, and I was going through a divorce, and that card was just, it literally was heartbreak. And it's when I see that card, and just with anyone who sees this card and doesn't really have a deep relationship with it, it is a card that kind of represents our fears, like facing our fears and really feeling the fears, and how heavy like the mind can be like over the heart when it kind of just like pierces the heart. And what I really like about this card as well is the Saturn and Libra relationship or correspondence to this. And it brings me to essentially like the law of balance, and just how Saturn is exalted in Libra, and how when we obsess and worry, or just even when we obsess over things and even put it on a pedestal, it's like at some point like that you're just creating extra energy, like the scales is like really out of balance, and naturally the balancing forces are going to like come in and neutralize that energy, because it's not like in truth, in a sense it's not like anchored in truth, it's really distorted. And that is usually the result that you get from that imbalance, right? It feels extreme, it feels intense, because you're getting kind of hit with that reality, which it is kind of that element of swords with the truth. And then when I kind of step out and look at the other two cards that surround the Three of Swords, with the Two of Swords, just that moment before you get to the three, it's like you're literally holding the truth, right? And you have two, and again, this is like the different extremes, and you're here in the middle, and you kind of don't want to really see what the truth is or what it is that you have going on. And so it's that environment or experience of denial, and of not wanting to see. And once you get to the other side, after that penetrating, like intense hit of reality and truth, whatever that is for you, you come into the Four of Swords, where it's just like all you can do is surrender. And that's the point of the lesson as well. The balancing forces are like, no, we're going to bring this lesson that will allow you to really surrender and realize, or like see the truth, right? And see the truth of maybe what your power is, or maybe the situation is not as bad as it is. And I really feel that as Saturn and Libra with that lesson in surrender. And the Four of Swords is that moment of surrender and finding peace and finding that meditative state. And so now, like with this perspective and experience and having to feel that Three of Swords energy very deeply often, I like that you just pulled this up here. So I'm probably the odd one that likes to see this, but it's interesting.
So welcome to Urania Universe if you haven't visited this amazing place yet. Why do you say Saturn in Libra?
So this is as far as the decans go, right? Every card has a planet and a sign that corresponds to it as far as the minor arcana. And so with the Three of Swords, it's Libra, right? This is all cardinal, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And this with the 3, it's Saturn and Libra. So there's a whole flow of how that decan system works with the minor arcana and the astrology. And yeah, so that's why I pointed out to Saturn and Libra.
Right. And so why I have these up in particular is because, of course, we had recently this Libra solar eclipse on October 2nd, right in the 11th degree, so 10 degrees plus. And the decans of the zodiac are the 10-degree division. So since the Golden Dawn times, who produced such tarot decks as the Hermetic Tarot and this Rider-Waite Coleman Smith deck, the Thoth Tarot, the minor arcana cards have been illustrated and have been associated with these 10 degrees divisions of the zodiac. And air cards are the sword cards, or air sign sword cards. So the first 10 degrees of Libra said to be associated with the 2 of Swords, the second 10 degrees of Libra with the 3 of Swords, and then where the sun is today in the third face, or the third decan, or the last 10 degrees of Libra with this 4 of Swords. And so moon in Libra with the first 10 degrees, right? Saturn in Libra with the second 10 degrees, 10 to 20, and then 20 to 30 degrees Libra. Jupiter in Libra. Yeah, and I'm really appreciating that because there's a lot of surrender going on over here right now. I want to share a thing of these cards before I do. These came from Etsy, and there was like a downloadable Rider-Waite Coleman Smith deck that I paid something for. But the one on the left, where you can see like the US Games copyright there, that came from a different screenshot, because let's see if this actually works. Did that card just move on your screen? Yeah. So the one in the downloadable deck is the one that you see on the left, and there's something missing.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
What I feel is one of the most important parts of
that is really important.
Which is what? So everybody, let's ask crowd here, right? So discerning light already says the moon. But this is a little astronomer's test in that card. So which way does Diana's bow, right? The crescent of the moon is always aiming towards what?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Wait, sure. Say it again.
The crescent of the moon is always pointing towards what? The sun.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay. I was like, doesn't it change? Yeah.
Right. And so if the crescent moon is here, that means it's not the western horizon, it's the eastern horizon that we're looking at.
Right.
And that the sun is high in the sky. And when the moon is that then typically you don't see that waxing crescent like young moon in the daytime sky. And so for me, that's not the moon.
Right.
It's the moon and the sun. And
Right.
we're coming out of the solar eclipse, right? So the solar eclipse has perfected, and now the moon is separated. The heart of the moon is separating from the heart of the sun. And so the sun is just being reborn. So this is Apollo's bow, right? The crescent sun that we only see at this time. So yeah, I'm just tripping on how in that card deck I downloaded that was missing. I've been sharing in constellations in the School of Astrology's community. We've been spending a good amount of time on this recent Libra eclipse, and it's been really awesome to hear a lot of amazing awakening beings kind of talking story about their own lives. And we've been looking at where this eclipse lands and different houses depending on the charts. And I'm just going to share a personal tale and then maybe ask for some folks to send some energy and assistance for me. And then we're going to get to astrologizing with children. Now, I was kind of freaking out that perhaps this thing, so this is this recent October 2nd, 24 eclipse, just right into 3 minutes into that second phase of Libra, which is associated with that Three of Swords card for all of us. But it was so strongly aligned to my own Pluto, pretty close to my Mercury during a Mercury return, and in my 5th house of children. So I was kind of freaking out that something might happen with our baby, who was just born in June, Maya. And I have to remember that eclipses aren't bad. And then eclipse energy happens before it happens. And so it was like we had a baby and my life completely transformed and has been like uprooted. And that Pluto thing, I think in that regard is honored. And that this is simply like a really strong eclipse on my Mercury and a Mercury year, 1st house year, complete change of direction because my life's been transformed. And now I'm a father of a baby and learning how to do that. Right. But I have some bad news to share, and hopefully we're just in a moment of bad news over here. But I want to put my guy Chase the cat up on the screen. So Chase has been missing, and traditionally small animals, they said donkey or smaller. So our cats and our dogs live in the 6th house of the chart. My friend Maurice Fernandez argues that they're 5th house beings because we treat them like our children, and they are. And so maybe this is the way that I'm experiencing that heartbreak and the need to surrender now has really been a theme. So Chase is an indoor-outdoor being. And he goes, sometimes he's disappeared for like 3 nights at a time. And those can be long nights for me when I hear the coyotes howling in the kind of nature here. But he always comes back. And now he's been missing since like Wednesday or Thursday. And we have signs out and we have notices with all of the vets and rescues nearby. And we've been knocking door to door and nothing yet, but I was wondering if people here, whether you're listening live or later in time, could just say, Chase the cat, journey safely home in your heart. And I would very much appreciate it if you do. So that's my little boy who's gone missing. And I can say the other piece is like after this eclipse in my 5th, we've been walking at night. Have you seen the comet yet, Urania?
I haven't. No, it's really cloudy and it's been overcast here for a few days. So
I'm sorry about that. You got to see the total solar eclipse in April, though.
I did. Yeah.
It clears up while you can still see. And folks listening, if you haven't seen the comet yet, and if it's clear where you are, go outside after sunset, find Venus. She's undeniable, just the bright, beautiful goddess of the evening, who's pretty low in the southwest. For those of us in the northern hemisphere, and if you look to the right, but just globally speaking, if you look towards the the north, you'll find the bright star Arcturus. And then in between, this beautiful, really long-tailed comet. And the comet, since I've seen it, has been moving through my 6th house of small animals. And it's like right above the zone where I assume Chase maybe was hunted or fell from a tree and is laying injured, or I don't know, totally freaking out, right? But I've been seeing this as like omen that I can't understand. And if he is transferred to the next place, then maybe he gets to ride that comet out into deep space, you know? This morning, we looked this way, it's beautiful sherbet, and then we had a double rainbow over that same zone. So I'm like holding hope. I really appreciate what you shared about those cards before, Urania, because this is, I'm just in this place of we just have to surrender to it. We've done what we can.
Yeah.
To be lit and for the prayers and all those things. So thank you. I did call a friend to cast a horary chart, which was awesome, but also kind of ambiguous. And it's really hard to read a chart without bias. And Joe, who cast the chart, he knows Chase. He lived here with us for a bit. And so it's, hard for him to say. Called in the psychics. And this kind of brings me to a bit of our theme today, which is astrology and our children. Like, big question I have is how much should we be in our kids' charts? How much should we be teaching our kids astrology, and the like? And so before I turn that question over to you, Urania, I just want to say this other thing that really inspired me about Urania's work from the first time I started watching her YouTube channel, which is fantastic. Everyone go over there and subscribe instantaneously, Urania Universe. Is that at the time when I was introduced to her work, her baby girl would just kind of crawl across her cards, or she's like talking astrology or whatever, and she just beautifully, like elegantly, never reprimanded her daughter, never like showed in any regard that she was frustrated about it or that baby wasn't invited to be in this portal, in the oracle, in the session, and just like let it happen so organically. And I have to say, it's been a really brilliant teaching for me as like learning to be a parent now of a baby girl, to just kind of let her be her and also like be in the space of the magic. So all that being said, how much should we astrologize with our kids, Urania?
Well, I just want to say I'm glad that it doesn't look messy, because I just kind of zone it out. But I do have my moments. It could be really distracting. So I definitely have my moments where I just, I'm like, I can't do this today. But at the end of the day, if you just have to do it, because then you'll never show up. And that's one of the things I told myself. And I like when I actually see other parents with their children, like whenever Maya is on, I'm just like, so it's really nice to see, and I'm glad that it didn't look messy or just all over the place. So thank you for always sharing that. As far as our astrology in reference to our children, I mean, it's so helpful, and I know I mean, maybe I'm biased, but it just, to be able to understand like how to meet her, like where she is so beneficial, and it's been so supportive thus far. She'll be 5 in December. And I think that, there is a fine line, of course. And I always remind myself of that when it comes to looking at our chart, or even in those moments where I'm like, this eclipse is happening here. Like, what is that going to mean? I really just take a breath and I surrender to it, because I can definitely spiral and go into those deep, dark places as well. And I think that I've also done readings for parents who have children, and the way in which I'm very selective. Usually it's friends or, spiritual practitioners of some sort. And so I give them, a heads up that, this reading is not intended to put your child in a box, but this is more so for you to get an understanding of how to be supportive to them of what their needs are. And you can also get an understanding of their learning abilities, their communication style, you know, how they interact with other people. And it's been really helpful for me because my daughter has Mercury conjunct the sun right on the ascendant. And when she's around people that she's comfortable with, like she's just like, you can't shut her up. But when she's around others, like she's essentially mute. And, you know, she just started preschool, and that's something that has been coming up as far as, you know, they try to engage with her, and she's not rude. So that's great. She's just really quiet, and she's a great listener. That's how I look at it. But if I didn't have astrology and knowing what Mercury conjunct the sun might mean, I would be really in my head. Then I would probably going to see doctors and like, you know, what's wrong with my child? And it would be really anxiety inducing. And so like everything, there's really a fine balance of how far you go with it. But I think it's an extremely incredible, you know, support system and perspective to look into when it comes to parenting.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth at times. I used to always, my first reading for people would be a recording. So I would like put a recorder in my pocket and just go walk in nature. And it was like there were a few reasons. One, I was still learning, but I think a lot of it was to appease the skeptic in me. And because I didn't want to have somebody there to just kind of check in with, and like I just wanted to like read the chart to them and then see how it worked. And then it was cool because I so often got responses that were like, whoa, dude, you like know all these things about me, whatever. I was like, wow, astrology's working. And then the other bit of that was eagle would fly by, you know, crying baby in a stroller or whatever, you know, there were like all these different symbols that could come into the session. Still these days, like I'm sitting here where I see vultures and eagles and crows and squirrels, or, you know, deer, whatever. And so that still gets to come into the session. These days, I can't imagine recording sessions for people. I really like to have the interface, you know, but I share that only because some clients then have me record sessions for their babies. And I am positive that I often committed the crime of TMI, of like too much information, right? Like, so getting into kids' relational patterns, like, well, that matters, especially with the way that they're going to relate with friends and whatnot and parents, like that's a thing, you know, like sometimes I just know I went too far. However, like I usually received really good feedback about that. I was at one point in time having an existential crisis about how much should we share with kids or about kids to parents. And, and I received a request from a couple that I did a recording for their twins before. And they were saying how much it had helped them navigate, especially the tricky times. I don't know if you can hear Maya crying outside the door. Baby. I think it's time for nursing. And so one of the twins in particular was kind of challenging, and they were like, we go back to that often and it really helps, you know. But at this point I was like having a hard time. So they asked me to record something for their kid. And what I did, like that's when I started doing these soul songs with my friend Eric, where we take a birth chart and I like translate it to musical harmony and all these different symbols. And then Eric records a song. And so I didn't even tell her I was going to do this. I just sent them a song and was like, here's your baby's chart. And the girl's name was Harmony. So it just felt like the right. But now I'm back, like really wanting to help parents work with kids. Other places I've gone with it, though, is like I see sometimes where we're maybe a little too fast to the chart. I mean, I think in all things in my life that can happen. And I had a session recently with a child of a woman who's a great astrologer. She found astrology when he was maybe 11 years old or 12. And ever since then, every problem he's ever had was described to him astrologically.
Mhm.
And he really had a hard time with it. And like he
Mhm.
just wanted a mom, not an astrologer.
Mhm.
And that kind of raised some interesting flags for me of like, okay, like how can I like utilize this gift and this tool, but also just be a dad and like speak English. I remind myself of that as a counselor, as I'm sure you do, and all astrologers do sometimes, depending on who we're speaking to, how much astrology do they speak? And even if they're a master, if we're just in the chart the whole time and talking aspects and harmonics or whatever we're doing, like, does that serve as much as just speaking heart to heart with somebody, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm not in any way saying we shouldn't astrologize with kids, but I am saying clearly that I've had some like, I don't know, existential crisis is too extreme, but I speak in extremes around it, and I'm wondering, have you found times where you wish you hadn't looked at the chart, or you just have to learn how to do that in a way that offers like peace? And I mean, I think you spoke to this a little bit before.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I don't know if it's because I kind of have an optimistic lens on it, or maybe the way I utilize astrology. So I, for several years now, I have shared like my goal, or I guess just the way I deliver and share astrology has always been like in a practical way. Like, how do we use this in practice? Like, what is, yes, we understand, like, this is what your birth chart says about your personality. And, I even started with, my thing was like telling, not necessarily telling people what their purpose in life was, but guiding them to it. And now I've even kind of stepped away from that, where it's just like, okay, how do we work with the cycles, and how do we utilize the elements of your chart, like your strengths, to learn, because everything's always changing. Like, what I thought was my purpose 10 years ago that involved astrology has evolved from there, so it's not the same. And so everything's moving, energy's flowing, everything's changing. And so I don't think I ever regret looking at, I wouldn't say I would not want to see her chart. uh but like you said, it's like how much, like as far as the way we communicate, and the way we even look at our child, like the challenges, I'll be straight up and honest, the challenges that we've experienced with her and socializing and being in school, because she's the only child. She doesn't really, I isolate, which is really bad. But I don't get out much. Her dad doesn't get out much. I don't have friends really here that have kids, so we don't really do play dates. She has cousins, so she hasn't really, socialized with kids. And so when it came to her chart, I also see that. I mean, she has Mars in Scorpio in the 12th house. Her Venus is in Capricorn, I think in the second house, and I mentioned the Mercury conjoined. The sun, right? So just her challenges with socializing has already become a thing. And it's like, I know it's in the chart, and I just like, it frustrates me, because then I feel like I've caught myself in moments where I'm like, well, is this just like how it's always going to be? Is it fated? So I think in that particular experience, I not knowing would maybe feel better, but then I feel knowing also helps, because it's like, okay, well, maybe there's a reason, what's the lesson here, and how do we, work with this? So I think it kind of opens it up. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to put this comment here from Discerning Light up, which is, I think, as long as we are observing and not projecting, right? And
Yeah.
hey, that in all things is with our children, which is really tricky, of course. There is an interesting quantum physics question, which is, how can you observe without projecting, right? Like observation influences the experiment, not that our children are experiments, Um, I wanted to read this at some point, and I guess it's now. So this is, I feel like such a powerful poem. It's one that I brought in a lot when I felt in the day parents were a little too close or like clinging or living vicariously or not letting the bird fly the nest, especially when kids were reaching adulthood, like it's really kind of surprised recently. I mean, I'm wishing right now that Chase had two things. One is the collar with our phone number, which he does not. And I'm talking about our cat in case people are just coming in who's missing right now. And the other thing is like, I wonder about a GPS. Like, frankly, with this guy, if he lived 20 years inside, that would not have been his best life. If he went 9 years and was recently coyoted or giant hawk, I think he might be beyond hawk capability or whatever. Like, that's Chase's best life. But I am wishing in some regards that I had a little GPS tracker on a collar and I could go find him wherever he is now. And I'm still on the fence about that. Like, is that freedom? So anyway, I've had some sessions with clients before where they talk about how their kid just recently went to college and they get together with the other mothers and they're all like GPS tracking their kids. And like, oh, look, my son's at the library right now. What a good boy. Or I wonder what's happening. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, right? And hopefully I don't become like, I need to be careful because we just had a baby girl and all that. Like, I don't see myself going there ever, but like, that's like, all right, that's when you need this poem. And we all do. I read this at the birthing class that Anna and I took recently, which is really helpful for me. I mean, she's a mother already, but it was really new for me, and having the baby at home and all that was super helpful. But anyway, so this is from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this poem, but I just wanted to read it. So your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. And for me, that's like a very deep, poetic reminder, invitation. And it's kind of like what we just read of, I think, as long as we are not observing and not projecting. But there's this thing about, letting our children be the teacher, not missing the opportunity to learn from these who were recently wherever we go, if that's how it works. I think there's a reason why children come in without the ability to verbalize, because they would give it all away.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that poem, and that's meant to be here as like a deep reminder for self. Anything come in for you when I was reading that, Urania? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar, but what came in, it was a reminder of, and I actually was just talking about this like a couple of days ago, but when I was pregnant, and I guess I should say before I was pregnant, one of my daily rituals was, and I wasn't working, I was just doing, astrology and everything at the moment for a couple months. I would wake up and I would essentially go into like a deep trance meditation, which began as, just writing and journaling my intention, my questions. I would light candles. I would set up crystals on the floor. And then I would like lay in a star formation with the crystals at each like point, basically. And then I would pop in some earbuds and listen to some, like singing bowls or any kind of like high frequency music. And I was able to really go into deep travels this way and like meet spirit guides and do all these things and learn about past lives. So that was like my morning ritual. So when I was pregnant, like the further along I got, I couldn't do that because I was the queen of like leaving the body. I was very not present in my body. And I think that was a part of my experience being pregnant and now being a mom, because I haven't really been able to do that much anymore. But right before I stopped doing that, I was still doing it in my first trimester. And I was able to connect with what I believe to be my daughter's spirit. And before I was even pregnant, I felt spirits around, like basically baby spirits. And I knew pretty much within a couple of weeks when I got pregnant and everything, like I was very clear and intentional about everything. And so when she came through a meditation, she pretty much was like, she wasn't in my body, like the spirit wasn't there, even though, things were happening. And she had came to me when she had made the decision to incarnate, right, to take on the vessel. And she basically told me that her purpose was here to kind of bridge the energies between myself and her father, which we're very spiritual, but we're very different. Like I would say, I guess I'm very like the light side and he's like the dark side, so to speak. We definitely are yin and yin yang. And she mentioned that she was here to kind of bridge those energies, and it kind of went on in depth about that. But it really gave me that poem, reminding me about that experience. And that's how I always look at the chart anyways when I do readings for people, is that you chose to come to incarnate into this lifetime. You chose the parents, the time, all the things. So why did you choose this, essentially? And so when it comes to the children, I've always believed the children are the teachers, at least when I started reading charts from that perspective. And so when it comes to children, when I had my child, I knew right away. I'm like, you're the teacher. Like, I'm watching you, I'm learning you. Just the fact of how she listens, how present she is, and how very selective she is already within her environment, whether it's like people, food, toys, whatever. Like, I'm watching and learning. So that it fully resonates with me. Are you muted?
I'm muted and I couldn't find the button because I was grabbing some other tarot cards for us to play with later. Yeah, and yet you still have to be the one to teach her to look both ways before she crosses the street.
Yeah.
And probably not touch the stove, but
Yeah.
we're gonna also learn once we do, right? Touch the stove. So yeah, it's like kind of interesting balance of teacher, student, parent, child, right? Which, I mean, I think we get to experience, like you and I both teach the mysteries, and teaching, sharing, guiding is always, I feel, the best way, if we're open to it, to open ourselves to learning and being guided, right? And so something in that with our children matters so much too. Have you started teaching? How old is your girl now? She's 5?
She'll be 5 in December. So
Are you
yeah,
teaching her astrology?
No, I haven't really. Like, she kind of hears it around. I feel that she more so connects with it visually. Like, she points at the moon, she actually points at Venus. Like, she's really good visually with that. And the cards, like she definitely is, she's into the cards more than astrology right now, at least. Yeah.
Will she pull cards? Does
And
she
she
talk about
pretends, yeah. I have
it?
videos of her even like 2 years ago where she would, because she's so used to seeing me do it too. So she'll
Yeah.
like, and then she got to a point where she would look at certain things on the card. That's where she's at now.
Looking at like particular
Yeah.
symbols, corner of the
Yeah.
card or whatever.
Like the moon and little things like that.
Yeah.
like what
Has
she
she said
understands.
anything where you're like, oh, damn, I never saw that before?
I feel like that's happened, but I can't remember. So
Mm,
I'm sure it's happened though.
yeah, and will happen more. I mean, it's like, what an amazing gift. Like, I didn't really learn about cards, or I was gifted a deck by my sister when I was, I don't know, what, 32, 33, somewhere in that
Yeah.
mix, I think,
Yeah.
and
I was 20 with my first deck, so
how did it
I was
happen
kind
for
of a
you?
late bloomer. I had a friend who, or she wasn't a friend at a time, she was a coworker, and I had gone through a period where I disassociated from the Christian faith that I grew up in. And then I was atheist for a very short period. And then I was, I was just like, okay, there's something going on. There's something out there. And I had always been drawn to like Wiccan or witchcraft, like what you would see in movies and hear about. And so a girl that I was working with at the time, I learned that she was raised Wiccan or pagan. And so I was like asking her all these questions and I was like, tell me everything you know. And she just gave me a deck of the Rider-Waite-Smith, the OG, and was just like, figure it out. And I was like, okay,
Nice.
so what do I do? And so it was really an like experiential experience with like just learning and understanding them.
They say your
Yeah.
first deck should be given to you. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't even say that, because for somebody who went to the store and bought one, you gave it to yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so this is totally random and off pace, but I gotta ask you. Anna told me the other day we were pulling cards around Chase, actually, and I got the happiness card, the what is the Nine of Cups card. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
but she told me, I was sitting there with my legs crossed, and she's like, "Oh, you do that?" I was like, "What? Like you're not supposed to have your legs crossed when you pull cards?" Have you heard that before?
No.
Okay, cool.
I sit like that all the time.
Honestly, that's
Like
really not
what?
my best. You know what I mean? Like, but Anna's also from Romania. We're not allowed to kiss underneath the doorway. There's some other things.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that one came in, but
Yeah.
I thought I'd check in with somebody who's in the
Oh,
car.
well, it's the like threshold situation. I mean, I think a kiss would be good under it though. I
Yeah,
think that would kind of like clear and bring in like the good vibes in the threshold.
I feel like kiss anywhere is good
Yeah.
medicine.
Right.
Is anyone here who's listening? Have you heard about don't have your legs crossed when doing it? Sometimes I'll catch myself like here where we look a little guarded in that. And it's actually
Mm.
there's one of the Rider-Waite cards where it
Hmm.
looks like that, right? The Four of Cups. Um,
I feel like on the Nine of Cups, isn't he sitting with his legs crossed?
I think he might be
I feel like
standing. I'm
or
gonna go
he's
look right now.
sitting. I feel like he's sitting, but
Yeah,
for
I
some
think
reason, when you said that, I had that image in my head.
right. So I'm pulling. Oh, he is. His legs
Mm.
are not crossed. His arms are crossed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But his legs are kind of like open, actually. But I'm thinking
Hmm.
of the Four of Cups card where there's the
Right.
three and like
He's on the ground.
spirits handing him another
Yeah.
cup, which I always feel like I'm satisfied with what I got. Like I'm like
Yeah. It's
tuning
like,
into
I don't
these.
know if I need that right now.
Mhm. Winter says, but
Ugh.
where would you put the mistletoe? Exactly. Um,
Mhm.
and then and Liz says, I think it's about the energy flowing freely. Yeah, that I mean that's that kind of thing, like trying to be open and just
Yeah,
feet on the ground is a nice way to be. Um,
true.
yeah, so Koa is kind of this interesting situation. That's my partner's 9-year-old boy, and I've been in his world since he was 3. His mom started discovering the mysteries. I mean, before he was born, like she and his dad did some intuitive development and psychic space. Before he was even conceived. But she
Mhm.
really found astrology right around the time of his birth, actually.
Mm.
And like, as we do, went deep. And his
Mhm.
dad's gone the other way, especially since their divorce and the like. And it's gone very rationalist and is not afraid to tell his Koa that astrology is nonsense and
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with science and all the stuff they say. So it's tricky for Koa because he's going back and forth between our houses.
Mm.
Here, like during the eclipse, we were doing burning ceremonies, and at home it's a different way to play, right? But he's remained, I think, really beautifully open and able to kind of walk in two worlds and keep his heart open and shining. It's I think it's very impressive, and there's many years to go, and I'm interested in just watching this. So I'm trying for that reason also to not like really push things in there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been out the last few nights checking out the comet. I'm not like talking about what it means,
Yeah,
but
the
we were
interpretation.
talking astrology too. So one of the ways that and then even like, well, how do I want to teach this? So part of it for me, like interestingly in school right now, they're learning about directions. So like one of his
Mm-hmm.
assignments yesterday was to, as we were driving home from school, to like draw a little rough map with the north and the northeast and the things,
Yeah.
which I loved. He told me that his teacher said that the sun rises in the north. I don't think that's true.
No, I don't know though. I don't know. You'd be surprised these days.
And I also wouldn't, But yeah, so we were walking actually with him and one of his peers and his friend's mother. And I was like, okay, well, what direction are we walking right now? And he was describing this assignment. We were walking back to our cars. And they were trying to see where they were sitting in the classroom compared to which way we were walking on the street. And they're like, and I was just like, hey, look at the sun. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
where's the sunset? And one of them said the south, and I was like, whoa. All right, it's like we need to work on that.
Wow.
For a while, like
Yeah.
during all the lockdown crazy, we had Koa like home learning in a pod of kids for a
Oh,
little
that's
while. It didn't
fun.
work out that well, but at one point I went out and like put a stick in the ground and try to teach them about the shadow and the sun moving clockwise through the sky and those kinds of things. And it was just too young, but like now he's ready for it. So we talked about that yesterday. Because
Oh,
for me, if
nice.
I can bring it in from like the earth astrology, from the natural experience, and
Mm-hmm.
even if, hey, like what time is it when the shadow is pointing this way or the sun's there, and then bring in the astrological houses in that way, right? But he's
Yeah.
consistently curious about astrology because his parents, like his mom and myself, are astrologers, and um, so I'm like walking this kind of fine line with him,
Yeah.
and I'm really not doing it through his chart that much. Except he's Scorpio rising, and he loves Mars. Like Mars is his
Nice.
planet,
Where's
and
Where's his Mars?
I
If you can say.
yeah, I'm wondering if maybe it's not my place to,
Yeah. But no,
but
I feel like with Scorpio risings, yeah, I mean, that mystery and the passion and like wanting to go deep with stuff, like, yeah,
and
I could see
traditionally
him
we
definitely being
say
really into that.
Scorpio rising means you're a child of Mars, right?
Hmm.
So it's like it's really cool to me that Mars is his favorite planet. I mean,
Yeah.
he's like an athlete, warrior kid. He's a kung fu
Hmm.
man. So like it's
Wow.
all like lining up. But it's just like, yeah, you're supposed to love Mars the most.
Right.
Um, anyway, so I really like to teach through Earth, and one of the ways I like to teach the archetypes is through the movie Castaway.
Hmm.
Which really, it's crazy. It basically just like starts at Libra and goes all the way around the zodiac and more. Like sequentially, there's some retrogrades, but like crazy things. Like in a Capricorn period, he's expressing his tooth pain well in front of the Kremlin,
Yeah.
in the snow. It's like wild, right? So he and I watched Castaway. I mean, interestingly, on a plane in great turbulence above the Pacific Ocean, which is probably a little too close to home, And then since then, I've been using like that movie story as a way to kind of describe the archetypes and the like. Um,
Hmm.
it's something I always wonder about with astrology students, because it lends itself more towards like a very modern astrology, alphabetical approach than I particularly prefer. Like Urania, I believe this is still true of you. We gravitate more towards some of the traditional approach to the craft, but I think it's interesting of like, how do we want to like offer simple entrance without the development of bad habits that people can't shake later, right? Like that's kind of a knife's edge. Like, so how much should I speak signs seasonally, knowing that I want to offer the entire global experience and the Southern Hemisphere situation and Hawaii versus London and all the things I talk about, but we're doing pretty well. And his school just changed campus, and now they have this, they like bought a campus that was, I don't know if it was originally, but it was most recently utilized by like a boys choir. And there's like a chapel with a 12-pointed zodiac star out front.
Cool.
Nice. So when we get
Nice.
to school early, I'm like, okay, picture the signs there. And like he could tell you the signs of, so I am doing it Northern Hemisphere seasonally, which I have a lot of resistance to personally, but I want him to have a energetic based
that's good.
experience of it, right?
That's good.
So he can tell you the signs of the seasons, can tell you the fire signs and those kinds of things.
Nice.
So we're really working hard not to make it a memorization, but to have like actual like experiences as part of it. And then it's like, I don't know, like once a month, the sun will be rising and then the conversation comes up.
Yeah, I think when it's like organic, that's everything. So it doesn't feel preachy, because that's my biggest thing. Like I don't want to come off as preachy, because I grew up in, an organized religion, and there was some freedom within that, but I just know from just any kind of beliefs, like my partner's mother is evangelical, but then she's kind of like, she's her own thing, because she'll like, oh, ask the pendulum this or do a reading. So we're like, okay. But she is really preachy about, come to church, or like, Jesus does this. And so I take that into account when I'm sharing, with my daughter or with anyone, that as long as I'm not too like preachy about it, like if it organically flows into conversation, like what you said, as far as knowing your orientation and your directions and your outside, and why not throw in, the astrology, and this is how we look at things as well, because I think that's really important for astrologers, professional astrologers to know too. And I think that helps, like doing it at a young age helps to bridge that gap, that separation of astronomy and astrology. And so you're already, kind of like eliminating the just the stigma around astrology and how it's not science and there's no connection. So I think you're kind of gradually doing that. And yeah, I think you're doing a good job at that.
Time will tell. Yeah, I mean, so in that, like the astronomy first, I actually had this conversation in StarryTelling Hour last week. I saw you there.
Yeah.
Like it can, for me, when I'm dealing with rationalists, if I show them my astronomical ability, then they're more open for the astrological, not to just, define me as a idiot or whatever. But I was just it was weird. I just flashed back to when I was in, I don't know, second grade, and McGruff the crime dog would come in. Did you have McGruff?
Yeah.
Right. And tell, like, basically get the kids to rat out on their parents if they're growing weed or doing drugs or whatever. Right. And like, how much do we need to also let the kids know, like, hey, like these are really cool things to be learning, but understand as well that like a lot of teachers are probably going to be adverse to astrology. I remember also I was in an advanced astronomy class at the University of Colorado. And it was right at the time, this will date me a little bit, but where we were developing the technology that allowed us to discover exoplanets, like planets in solar systems far away. And one of the first that was discovered was Zeta Reticula. And there's a lot of alien myth, like going back to the Betty Barney Hill story, Bob Lazar at Area 51, and on and on. If you know, you know. That kind of speaks about the grays coming from Zeta Reticula 4b. And so I was like, Zeta Reticula, like, no way. And they're like, what's such a big deal about Zeta Reticula? And I was like, well, Betty and Barney Hill and the star map that the aliens gave them. And the teacher was just like, I was done for the year, right? They didn't want to hear anything from me. I don't think I was doing, well, I know I wasn't doing great in school in general at that time, but I'm sure it didn't like reflect on my grade too. It was just like some shit you keep to yourself. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think astrology should be that in any way. But I also, like, I appreciate hearing that reflection from you, and that reminder is really important for me. Like, if I teach them, like, yo, these are just the hours, right? So, like, I'm having a hard time not saying adult stuff to Koa, because he's a very intelligent and advanced 9-year-old, and he's asking things about politics right now, right? So it's really tricky with election coming up. But like the other thing, like I was just doing some personal research this week on time as it's described in the Bible. Because when they say like the 9th hour, they're not talking about 9 a.m. Right? It's more like 3 or 4 p.m. They're talking about the 9th hour of day, or maybe the 9th hour of night, because in the Jewish tradition, Hebrew calendar predating that calendar, we start days at sunset.
Right.
I mean, even in Galileo's chart, which we have in his own pen, he has the time. It's displayed 2 different ways. And one is from sunset the day before, and then the one is the new convention, which is the AM PM thing that a lot of us are doing, right? So I was like looking through these different Bible passages where they talk about different hours. And when Jesus walks on water, it's sunrise. I'm like, yeah, because when the sun rises, you get the sunlight walking on the water. And so, like, for me, like, I'm a Christian because I just see the sun in our sky as Christ. And I think when you read the Bible in that way, it's really clear. But like, if they like give that one to a 9-year-old or 10, 11, 12-year-old, like that can cause some really significant complications socially, you know? So it's this weird thing of like, I want to be out as an astrologer. I want to encourage, and I love, as you and we all do, like the popularity of astrology rising and young people interested in astrology. And just had a client the other day who's been running a community garden forever. And it's like, well, how much can you do astrology there? She's like, nobody's been interested, but now there's some young people coming in and they're really into it, you know? Which is great.
I can definitely see that. For some reason, I just feel that your daughter is going to be like, y'all are going to be like this with all of that. Like, I feel, that she's like your understudy, or just for lack of a better word. Once I heard when, I didn't even know any of her, lineup, but when I heard, like, just knowing that she was a Gemini sun, I was like, that's interesting. That's a nice little gift. And then her being born on Father's Day, I was like, this is so sweet. So I just have my own feelings about that. But I love, like, you're kind of getting the practice now with Koa. And then this is just, I feel like the younger generation, with the popularity of astrology and just like mysticism in general and spirituality coming through again with an upswing, I just feel like there's something deeper happening within the younger generations. There's like an opening, and I feel that I can't even put it into words. It's a feeling. But I think as long as we're, sharing like organically, of course, age appropriate. And one of the things that I've started to do just like a little bit with my daughter, but it'll definitely be a bigger thing when she gets older, is that, because I don't want to throw too much. I'm even like that with people who study with me. I'm like, I don't want to throw too much at you because I'm like so excited. So I'm like, just take this little bit and sit with it, and then we can discuss more and go further. And, I'm going to do that with my daughter. And also, if you have any questions, like, that's the biggest thing. The door is always open. So if you're getting questions about, people are coming at you with like, different comments about astrology or just anything as far as mysticism, where to come, right? We have a strong relationship. I'm going to be honest with you. And if I can't answer, we'll learn together. Like that's kind of where I'm at with my child and essentially with anyone, because I have people that come to me who are just getting into astrology or tarot or anything, and they see things online and on social media. That's where you can tell when there's like some sort of like there's a lot of emotion behind what people are saying, that it's like something's going on there. Like I'm just gonna go to this person that I know is very grounded and has a very practical but also spiritual open way of looking at things and seeing what their perspective is, because at the end of the day it's like no one really knows. And that's one thing with my child. It's like I'm doing my best, you're doing your best, and we're going to figure this out together in some way. But I'd like to have the door open and just explore and learn in that way, and just be honest. Like we don't have to figure out, we're learning. It's all a code, it's all a mystery. We're uncovering all these different philosophies and truths and perspectives. I've been watching Indiana Jones movies. I've like started from the beginning and going through them. I don't know why I'm being pulled to like this, like just digging for like treasure and just ancient wisdom and artifacts and all of those things. I really love that. And so, that's just
well, we're
what I see.
sharing Harrison Ford because I'm taking Koa through Star Wars for the first time.
Oh, nice. Maybe I should do that.
Mom would
next.
never let me bring Star Wars because of all the lasers and stuff. But he's been like watching Godzilla at his dad's. And I'm like, yo, can I have some Star Wars with the kid, right? So
right.
Yeah. And then the Raiders will come. Have you watched the National Treasure films?
I don't think so. Or they're newer, right? Are they
They're
newer ones?
newer. I mean, they're not brand new yet. But Nicolas Cage, they're super good.
Oh no, okay, I haven't.
The Tomb Raider on that level, pretty good as well. They redid it recently. Some of the Mummy stuff, but
I love the Mummy. I did that a couple months ago, so I gotta wait a while, but
yeah. I mean, it's tricky when you know Kemet sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hear you. So I wonder what's happening in like Harrison Ford's activations that has you and I called to the the force with the adventure hat on. Well, I would be remiss to not check in with you, and who can say, but what does your heart say about this kind of rising interest in mysticism and the mysteries now? Like, why?
So I feel that there's a part of me that kind of is resistant to it. Not that I think that people shouldn't know or have access to this, but it's just I'm one of the people that thinks like there should be initiation. There should be some sort of like reverence and practice. Even with astrology, I feel that I wish there was some more structure around it, because I know of, I've heard of people who use it in a really, bad way of just boxing people in and giving readings even from that perspective. And so I do feel that all astrologers should learn astronomy. That's definitely something I'm like, maybe not all astronomers need to know astrology, but if you're going to be an astrologer, let's understand the astronomy associated with astrology. And I'm still learning. I'm a forever student. And I'm excited about this expansion and just like uprising in mysticism and spirituality and astrology. And I really hope Saturn will come through before it leaves Pisces and give us some structures and maybe like some like boundaries or rules around, what we're doing here, because it can really go to the extreme, and I'm hoping that it won't.
Yeah, I mean, man, I can't tell you how difficult it is for me when people come in and they're like, yeah, well, I'm a level 3 astrologer with this teacher or that. There's one specific teacher. I'm like, as soon as they say it, I'm like, oh. like I'm gonna have a really hard time speaking through like this astrology language to that astrology language.
Yeah.
There's no Rosetta Stone, but again, like they don't know the horizon is the ground beneath their feet on the chart, the ascendant, descendant axis. It's like there's no earth in your astrology. Like, so, but can I introduce that just slowly? I love using Stellarium astronomy software and just showing them a bit of it. And yeah, I mean, the times are changing, and the beautiful thing about astrology, and it's tricky because there are so many paradigms, it's like there are so many languages, you know, but it offers this ability of accelerated communication. Like, just you can say one word like Scorpio and it means 1,000 words. And right, so I think you were sharing with me when I invited you to come on, you just did as well. Your daughter's now at school, and it would be so much easier if you could just communicate to the teachers, like show them the chart and be like, you see, right? So like be tolerant of, and it's very easy to see this in a different way, right? If you like honor that this is where she's coming from, you will see that it's not rude or bad or anything like that, right? So
and I feel like with this, when people understand astrology, like when you actually look at the chart, like not just knowing sun signs and all of that, but when you actually look at the chart, you really do see how diverse everyone is and like the randomness that you can get, And so while you want, this is what a child should act like, or, then once you start to learn astrology and see the different just varieties of how things align and connect and interact with one another, then I feel like it loosens up the pressure of them having to be this, and that. And I feel like her school, she does Montessori. So it definitely is a bit open to like, let's let the kids do what they want. We'll come to them. And I've seen the director of the school who I always engage with. She's had like the moon phases necklace, and she's had other things, and just our conversations with her, I was like, I feel that you're open to this. I have like a deep feeling that she is connected, but I don't want to just open with that. Like it's going to have to happen organically. Like maybe in the first, like maybe in one of the parent teacher conferences, like we're going to have one soon.
Does she know you're an astrologer?
Yeah.
So there's more of an opportunity for her to come to you.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
And maybe she's like, Urania is coming by and put that moon necklace on.
Right.
It's time to learn.
Open it up, right?
I want to like offer, hey, can I come show the kids about the sundial? Right. And so ways that aren't like fully astrology, but just things like, hey, I understand you're learning this. This is like one of the things that I love so much. Can I show you this thing? This is going to be even more random, but as I like to say, all these many branches I'm called to climb, they emanate from the same trunk. But I got to show you that stuff because of our current Indiana Jones for you and Star Wars for me happenings. I had to bring up Harrison Ford's nativity, which is this. I'm not sure what the rating is for his ascendant, but that 11:41 a.m. looks pretty specific. So born in a Cancer new moon. You see Cancer a lot. Actor-actress charts. There's something about the ability to play roles. It's really cool to see Mercury on high, and then Gemini Venus in the 9th. The way he kind of stumbled into his opportunity as an actor is amazing. But check this out. Here's his current secondary progressions. And here's the recent solar eclipse. Although I don't know why this isn't the exact eclipse. Do have parallax on? Anyway, so he has his current progressed Sun Mars in the 10 degrees plus Libra. The eclipse was right there. So I wonder if we are hearing some universal resonance of eclipse activations.
Yeah, I'm wondering who else is watching.
Anyone else on a Harrison Ford trick right now?
Right.
Yeah, Raiders is the jam. I wanted to put this up that Winter said before, which I love so much. He wrote, I have heard that when in the mindset of play, it takes an average 5 to 10 repetitions to learn something that when in a work mindset would take over 100 repetitions. That's just such a really beautiful reminder. And I think the opportunity to astrology with our kids will help us with that too. When I created my Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers course that I offered through Astrology Hub some time ago, I had Koa then. He must have been 4 or 5. Like I set up a zodiac. We have a round trampoline, and I turned it on its skin so the pillars were sticking. I think it had 12. It has 12 feet, and so it was just really convenient to tape a sign to each of those legs of the trampoline sticking up in the air, and then I would stand in the middle as the Earth, and then I had him orbiting me.
Oh, nice.
Right. And so I was just kind of talking about, all right, well, this is Earth's experience of the sun moving through the signs, right? And then I had him in the center and I was the Earth and I was orbiting him. And I was like, see, it's just the same thing. Like that's happening because the Earth is orbiting the sun. And I think I actually did get to some retrogrades too. Because if you get 2 moving planets in that scene, you really get to see like why Mercury, Venus retrograde for different reasons than Mars, Jupiter, Saturn do. But we really did have that kind of playful, embodied, active thing. And I am not the most embodied being over here working on it. Astrology and especially astronomy really help. Like when I gaze at the sky, somehow I know I'm an earthling. And all of my practices, they start with going out, being an earthling, hearing the crickets, like seeing the birds, whatever it is, and then opening Earth's eyes to the sky, right? But finding these like more playful ways to share this mystical information with our kids will also probably open up like greater gateways of them teaching us how it can better be taught and shared. So that's a place I was hoping we would get to today. And I think we have kind of spontaneously.
Yeah, I think you hit it right there too, where it's like the play and the exploration. I feel like kids are just naturally drawn to that. And when you're teaching astronomy, it's natural we should be going outside in a science class, especially as young kids, and doing that and connecting with just what's happening in the moment. Even where's the sun? Like, what are you feeling beneath your feet? Where's the wind blowing? And I think that in itself is already connecting to that spiritual aspect that's within astrology, like that interpretation of like what's coming up for you at that time. What are you feeling in the moment? So, and I think those kind of moments are what you really remember and how you really learn. Because I've had moments like that with my grandmother as a young child, and it was more so connected with church, but somehow it made its way into the way I practice now. And it's just that spirit within, the natural world around you, because we would do things like that, but it would be more from like a church kind of like God perspective. But it's like that kind of carried on to what I'm doing. So I think if you're setting those roots there, from the beginning, and you're creating that practice, then whatever they grow into is going to be kind of anchored in that connection to the world around you, right? In the spirit within things. I think that's most important, because my biggest fear is like my daughter being completely opposite of this, like being like, I hate to say, like a devout Christian, and all of those things are being very like boxed in. So I make sure I don't box her in. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to this, and then you just fly free, and hopefully you land somewhere, safe.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I get that fear that kids will often go just in the opposite
Yeah.
direction, right? So that if I'm pushing these things, and I think it just gets back to, like you said, like I will answer any question, right? So instead of this is your mandatory learning today, like once you become interested in this, like, you know, hey, Co, are you interested in me showing you the sundial and talking about directions with you instead of like, come outside, do this now or whatever. We were playing last night and I had a timer set for every 10 minutes. So I'd go check in with the comet. And he came out with me twice. And the next time he's like, yeah, dude, I've had like enough comet. So hurry up, let's get back to the game, which I can appreciate.
Yeah.
I came across, well, let me ask you this, Urania. When did you first learn about the phases of the moon?
I want to say it was probably, no, it was definitely when I was doing when I was doing witchcraft and stuff. So I hate to say it was like in my early 20s, like around that time, 2021, when I actually really knew what that, like I knew I've heard of it, but like to actually fully understand it and connect with it was probably between 2022.
Yeah, like watching the moon is crazy confusing. Right? Like you see a young moon over here in the west, and then suddenly the next day it's like further away, and like what, you know? And that's been a thing with a very close one to me. She's like, just what, like what's going on with this, you know? And
that's been coming up lately. I've had like 2 or 3 people like, why am I seeing the moon during the day? I'm like, no, this isn't like, this is common. This happens. Like, it's not,
yeah, because like, you're just looking.
You're just like, aware. You feel it. It's there. But it's, that's funny.
Yeah, like I can't believe I never. I mean, I'm sure I saw Venus before I saw Venus. But to not have that experience as a kid of like, you know, like Co is not going to be able to say later in life that he was not aware of Jupiter in the sky or Venus or whatever, you know what I mean? And you know, whatever it does for him, but I'm like, you know, check out how bright Venus is. Dang. Check out how in July the sun is setting over there, and how in November the sun's setting over there. Like he's really having like astronomical experience, and I don't need to like teach all the theory to him, you know, but I don't know, like it might have been not until I discovered astrology, which was way later in life. I was 37 when I learned the phases of the moon. I mean, of course, I had learned even in school about new moon and waxing moon and full and waning half moon, but like where they show up in the sky.
But
like
you didn't really connect. Yeah. Like I didn't connect until I was really into spiritual practice and learning astrology and all, and and tarot and all of that stuff, which is really interesting when you think about it.
You know, I didn't have a teacher for that. I mean, I was fortunate to have begun then at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, which definitely promotes, I mean, frankly, preaches a living sky connection for any astrologer, which I like hearing you say as well. I of course find it to be so important to like have an earthly experience of the planets, but we really do have to initiate ourselves through those things, right? But somebody shows you like the doorway to the temple, and then you go in and you sit for a while, right? And sit for some months. And that I'm just got confused by a comment Melinda said. Harrison Ford had like his 4th or 5th plane crash this year, or maybe last year. Whoa!
What?
Right, there's a chart to go play.
Check in on that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check in on that.
I've been trying to find. While we've been talking here, something that turned up. My mother like kept a bunch of my school stuff, and then I had it forever in my garage in Seattle. And so then when I moved down here and I was going through stuff to at least purge some of it, I came across, I'm sure like the day I was first introduced to the planets of the solar system in 2nd grade. And there's this drawing I made, a really, you know, not great artistic impression, where it has all these planets and they're all saying different things. Like Mars is saying, don't blame it on me. And some other interesting things. I understood that, but I couldn't. But it was cool because like, of course I was, you know, introduced to the planets with no astrological context at all. my transit and progression charts and all that stuff for the day I met the planets was like, a quest of mine. Like, it was really hard to go through these old memories because there's dates on them. And so as an astrologer, that means a 5-hour commitment to go explore all the timing techniques and whatnot. Right. But it was cool. And I think that fascination of space and of the unknown, the kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark thing that's available through telescope or feet on the ground and just engaging with the sky. Like the first time kids see the rings of Saturn or witness an eclipse. A story I love so much. I was in Hawaii once and having a very small group celebrating a solar eclipse at the time. And I went over during our time and walked over to a sacred site there to leave an offering. And this kid was like, "What are you guys doing?" And I gave him some eclipse glasses and I was like, "Check it out." And he looked at the sun. He was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "That's the moon, dude. That's an eclipse." He's like, "Whoa." And he like ran away with the glasses to give to his sister. And then he caught himself and he turned back and he came back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, "Well, you can have those, man." He's like, "Oh, good." He's like, "I got to show my sisters. I have to show everyone."
Oh, yay. Oh my goodness.
Feel. And there's just something in that joy of discovery of the unknown and the mysteries. The thing that I will keep most from our conversation today, Urania, although I plan on going back to listen to it a few times, is it's like none of us know the answers. Because I think that's when the oracle goes in the wrong direction. Right. And it's a challenge with teaching astrology. It's certainly a challenge with learning astrology. Whose astrology is right? How should we teach these things? What's the best way to share this? Like sometimes I will switch paradigms mid-reading when I find that some approach that's not the one I typically take works better for a client than my own, And having that flexibility and that adaptability and that like avoiding the hubris of I've figured it out is so important, not only as a teacher or as a counselor, but obviously as a parent, and I think that's the number one. All right. So 2 things I want to say before we close. Well, I want to take another adventure, but first, I like knowing Maya's chart. I imagine should she be open to it, she'll be receiving some Urania Universe teachings in the future.
I hope so.
To have the chart.
Her and Sidori can get together. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. But she has the chart of a deep dreamer, and we'll see. Like I'm trying not to determine who she is by her nativity, but that's the word that I think more than anything else really comes through.
Yeah.
And the dream work has been so important for you, and like more and more.
Yeah.
So will you tell us about the podcast you just recently started?
Yeah. So I started a podcast with a friend who she's been lucid dreaming since she's 3. So she's very comfortable in the dream space, like in the astral realm. Her dreams, we share dreams all the time, like pretty much almost every day. And her dream space, when she tells me, I'm just like, wait, that wasn't a nightmare. And she's totally fine. So we've been sharing dreams, and we've started a podcast where we talk about different dream subjects. We talk about astral travel. We'll also be talking about any kind of topic involving mysticism, and of course, it's going to probably loop in dreams. And we just kind of explore and go deep with it. We research, what's coming up. Sometimes we'll set little tasks for ourselves. Like we had a couple episodes on dream incubation, which is when you set an intention or ask, a question to your dream space. And then you see if they, if that answer or the healing or whatever it is that you request, if that comes to fruition in your dreams. And so her and I did an experiment, and then we shared our experiences and how that unfolded on our podcast. And the podcast has been official since September 17th, which was the Pisces eclipse. But we've been having these ongoing conversations since the beginning of the year, which you can find all of those on my YouTube channel, Urania Universe. Our podcast is called Journey Through the Universe. We have a YouTube channel for that. So we also do our episodes, our live chats on YouTube. So you can join us live and ask questions. People share dreams with us, and with their permission, we share on our podcast and, you know, give our perspective. And we always say your intuition, your interpretation is number one. And we just kind of give, you know, our read on it. And usually what always happens is that you get some other like form of enlightenment or some guidance or wisdom when other people share, you know, their read on it. Especially for me, I have a lot of anxious dreams. And so, you know, my mind tends to go like, it spirals out there. And so it's nice to have, you know, her and other people that I trust to share with, because then they'll give me, you know, their perspective. And, you know, it kind of, I find my way to like a very calm, peaceful state within, you know, what the message might be. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I have also talked about just having a dream practice and working with the cycles of the moon and doing your record keeping with your dreams, as well as, you know, other dream planets such as Pluto and whatnot. So that's kind of where I'm hanging out right now.
I love it. And you do dream counseling as well as astrological and tarot counseling, right? Or I imagine it's all
Yeah,
mixed
it
in.
all tends to kind of be mixed in. But yeah, I do. Yeah, it all kind of mixes in. It's hard to not, you know, go to the chart. It's hard to not pull cards. So yeah, I kind of it depends on basically the client, what the client, you know, is more comfortable with. Like I've had clients that just want only astrology. And then I have clients that, you know, are not really familiar with the language of astrology. So I'll do the tarot, and I also do, you know, and dream interpretation too.
So UraniaUniverse.com is a place where I imagine you can link to all the worlds in this Uranian universe. So that's on the screen for you, friends.
Yeah.
I want to pursue a couple things, but do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's play with anxiety a little bit more.
Yeah, that's funny.
Before I do, let me just invite anybody who's witnessing this now or in the future to please like the video, share it around, subscribe to the channel. That helps a ton, helps us defeat the algorithm. And if you want to support Urania's work, please do uraniauniverse.com. You can find me at geminibrett.com. Best way to support my work is through booking a session or through joining Constellations, which is the School of Astrology's membership community, where we have a different teacher every week. I teach once a month. We have really wonderful teachings. And I think I'm going to hopefully bring Urania in a bit when she is down to guide us through some dream sharing. I learned a lot from the Robert Moss kind of line of responding to somebody sharing a dream, which is the lead always with, if this was my dream, right? Which I feel so helpful. And sometimes like I'll actually use that term instead of if this was my chart, like an astrology session. It's like, oh, if this was my dream, or this was my song, I would imagine that one working this way or that. Have you had experiences like that or whatever? And it's why like I really need to be in Libra with people in sessions these days instead of creating recordings as I first did, though I still remain skeptical, though astrology proves herself to me many times a day, every day. It's an intriguing thing that I can hold on to some old like materialistic need. But yeah, like that idea of like, if this was my dream, if this was my vision, even if that was my fear, if this was my anxiety. So I appreciate you sharing that about your dreams going to anxious space some in the past. We interestingly, reading from that, trying to get charts back up, reading from that on children from Khalil Gibran and like the Archer, right? So Sagittarius rising for me at the time of our beginning, but it was the heart of the Scorpion. 10 Sag was rising here, and for you Capricorn rising, which means the Archer constellation. So that was a fun one. But we do see some anxiety in this chart. Like Sun squared Mars yesterday. I mean, conveniently had a trine with Jupiter at the same time. That's kind of where I want to play, because we started looking at this set of 2, 3, and 4 of the swords, which correspond with the decans of Libra, the first 10 degrees of Libra, second 10 degrees where we had the eclipse on October 2nd, and then these recent degrees. And I really appreciate it. That's the first thing I'm going to go back and listen to, like literally in an hour after we finish this, is some of what you were sharing about surrender, because that's like what's clear to me with missing cat right now, is we've kind of done the things we can do besides having a candle lit and being in prayer. And actually, before Urania and I jumped on screen here, we were talking backstage, and you shared about how your cat Wednesday was gone for 2 weeks once. And Chase, when we got Chase, he had been like stuck in somebody's like storage unit for a week. It was just tiny, you know? So like, I know I'm still holding the faith he can come back. We haven't seen him since I think the 11th. And I've decided like I will mourn on Samhain. Like if he's not back by then, that feels like a decent time to celebrate, you know. But there is all of this anxiety, and I'm looking at Jupiter right now, and looking at Jupiter for many reasons personally, but because like where I am at the start of our journey, this right, Jupiter in the last 10 degrees, or sorry, the sun in the last 10 degrees of tropical Gemini. Well, Jupiter right now is in the last 10 degrees, Sun in the last 10 of Libra, Jupiter in the last 10 of Gemini, and that's associated with this 10 of Swords. Now, my moon was in this face, so I've spent a lot of time staring into this strange window. I want to change the way that I'm sharing this so I can also see you as I do. So let me figure out that kung fu real quick. But I was wondering if, like we came in with you sharing some wisdom about cards, if you would maybe share a few things about what you find in this kind of difficult image of the 10 of Swords from the Rider-Waite Coleman Smith deck.
Yeah. I mean, this is such a painful, like I feel, even though we're dealing with the element of air, so it's definitely still reminding us that it's all in the mind, or that it's heavy up here. But like all of that energy, all of that tension is like creating pain, some sort of pain or sensation in the physical body. And I think about, when I see this card, I think about the tension headaches, like literally where you're just like, so, you've been stressing and worrying and having anxiety, that it creates like this pressure. And at that point, literally all you can do, again, it comes back to surrender. And with this card, it's the card where it's number 10, right? And so there's the element of like, it's like almost, it's an overabundance, an overflow of the thoughts. And but with the imagery here too, it's like the skies, to me, the skies are clearing. That's the way I look at it. So there's no way up from, there's nowhere else to go but up from here, right? Or to pass on through, like you've died, you're about to ascend, or so, And so, but either way, there is like, this is the end, this is the conclusion, and there's a peaceful journey. There's like a transition that's happening. And if you jump to the Page of Swords, like he's ready to go. Like it's, he's very clear, and I feel directed. And with Jupiter, correspondence to what Jupiter and Gemini right now, where Jupiter is. Yeah. As far as like this decan, it feels, and I'm just also thinking about the Four of Swords too. So I'm getting like confused, but, I just feel this expansion, this clearing, like creating space. And whenever you stop worrying about something, whenever you just surrender, like that clarity comes in a space of stillness. And I think about Jupiter's correspondence to, Sagittarius, spirituality, or just that practice of, like, I think of the sage, and I just go out there with like all the correspondence, but I come to a place of like peace and finding, again, coming back to some sort of truth. And it's that stillness again with the Four of Swords. The guy is laying down, almost looks like he's dead. And this one, it's more extreme, with it's like, okay, we're gonna really get you, like, you're done, we're done with this, right? And it's like a forced meditation or forced stillness. But at this point, it's gonna clear. Whenever I see this, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's very painful, but this is it. You're moving forward, you're moving on, and things are going to get better. You're going to ascend, or something's going to come through that'll bring that clarity. So that's what I get when I see the Ten of Swords. Especially then you take into context what other cards show up for you. But
right, yeah, I mean, and interesting, like in the journey, like 8, 9, 10 of Swords, I think there's a lot about the Eight of Swords, where she's blindfolded and however has a foot in the water or a foot in the land, which we see is a pretty consistent symbol, like back to the castle. It really feels like the card of meditation to me, and it's said to be the card related to the first 10 degrees of Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini, right? And then we get to Mars and Gemini with the 9 of Swords and anxiety. You can see a lot of Mars in that card, but there's also this kind of like ladder to heaven, the sharp ladder, and this one is the sun. So I see it as the sun rising. The posture, the mudra in his hand as well. Like we see that in Christ postures often, right? And yeah, it's kind of like if you're willing to surrender the mind, a new light will rise. It's interesting, as you were sharing, like if we go from here, and I guess I have to stop that to start again, and then move on to the page as the tarot does, like that's a whole other story, right? But in the zodiacal order and this connection with the faces of the zodiac, we get from the 10 of Swords in the last 10 degrees of Gemini, where Jupiter's now retrograde and we'll be exploring for some time. But then we get to
the Two of Cups, right?
To Cancer, and to the Two of Cups. So maybe we can end with a little transmission here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even looked at it from, I like that though, because that is bringing you that's coming into union. And I feel I'm thinking about, the swords, and just how the mind can be so it cuts deep. And it's just that whole journey of if you've ever, which all of us I'm sure have experienced, the really intense anxiety, depression, worry, and then you somehow find yourself on the other side of that, and that healing, like if you find yourself on the other side of it through some sort of healing experience, you feel so connected with the divine, connected with yourself. And it's just this deep intimacy of how you got through that. And another aspect within you, or two aspects have come together and have integrated in a way that's really loving, which is this card. This is the true Lover's card in the deck. This is the actual union card. And I love the blessing of the lion with the angel and the protection. And it's just, wow, I've never really looked at it that way.
And if 10 of Swords is sun, then this is Venus, right?
Venus.
So Venus in Cancer. Yeah, why is it the true Lover's card? And what is up with that line?
Well, the Lover's card is, it corresponds to Gemini. And not saying that Gemini isn't loving, but I feel, again, it's with the Gemini Lover's card, it's about choice. And you see that through the progression of, if you look at the major arcana separately, like you see how that kind of flows into the journey. But this one is like the union. I don't know, it's just all of the imagery. And then Venus in Cancer, where it's just, you have the sign of nourishment and support, and just creating that very loving and warming space for things to grow, as well as Venus, who has pretty much the same intention. I feel so much love in that energy. And with the Lovers card, I tend to look at that more of like, there's, we're kind of at a crossroads, or there's a decision, which still has that angel, like within the imagery. So there's still some sort of divine protection and guidance, but it's just this one in particular is more of like direct union, intimacy, I feel.
Let me do one more thing here. This is a little game I've been playing recently, and yeah, I don't know where it's going to take me, but so in a sense, like when we look at the 10 of Swords, it just feels a lot like death of the mind, and then maybe that leads, since this would be like the first 10 degrees of Cancer, to like the very young heart in some ways. But this is the game I've been playing, which is to superimpose these things.
Ooh, that feels right.
Yeah, it's like it's interesting even here just to see how their bodies and cups are kind of aligned to the swords. I mean, it's not surprising to see the caduceus like in the middle of the sword group, but it's actually, it doesn't separate the swords as 5 and 5, but rather 6 and 4. And I don't know what to do with all of that now.
Interesting.
It's kind of cool to see them like, I don't know, standing on this deceased one and celebrating a new rising love into winged lion face, of course. So
yeah,
that's
cool. I like that.
Yeah, and that's been just like getting cards in a place where I can make them transparent and doing things, so I wonder if any of that was going down when Pamela Coleman Smith was painting these so many decades ago. Love to be a fly on the wall of how that whole thing looked.
Yeah.
But that can't happen for me. What can is to be able to spend hours of my days with just amazing, interesting, weirding, awakening beings like you, Urania. I'm so grateful for you coming to spend some time here to connect, for your friendship and guidance over the years. And I'm looking forward to many, many more. And I really appreciate so much of the wisdom that you shared today about this question that's, of course, becoming more and more interesting for me. Friends, I hope you will support Urania's work, uraniauniverse.com. You will find an entire universe to explore over there. It is good. Check out her YouTube, Instagram, all the things. This new podcast sounds intriguing. I can't wait to subscribe and tune in myself. And if you want to support my work, well, just get more back for what you give and come join Constellations for a month. Check it out. It's only $16 a month. You will meet amazing people where we talk stories. So this Saturday, I'll be hosting a community discussion, 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll look at, recent times and charts. And I imagine I will be talking about my cat just came home and wanting to explore that with you astrologically. I don't know. Whatever's going on in our actual lives with actual people looking at charts, not only of the Harrison Fords and people that I won't meet and get to talk to, but of people who are kind of sharing from their own heart, their own personal experiences. I think it's just a great way where we can learn astrology together and really develop community. So something that I've been loving about my life this year, and also learning how to be a dad. So Urania, thanks for some keys that I know will help me unlock those mysteries too.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all. We will see you next week. Oh, by next week, on Wednesday, it's my solar return. So the plan next week is to talk about how to
get your Scorpio
return. Yeah, Scorpio. Yeah, how to solar return Earth astrologically. So I've already asked permission. I usually have the baby strapped to my chest for a walk under the stars so mom can rest for a couple hours soundly in the early morning hours. But Wednesday next, if the sky is clear, I'm going to be up in my morning sky space for the first time in many months and just like looking at what the stars do before sunrise on my time of the year, which is one of the many practices I look forward to sharing with you. So hope to see you there. And if not sooner or sometime also on the earth. Thanks again to everyone for the present of your presence. Thank you, Urania. We'll see y'all in space.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.